Welcome to yet another episode of the Inverted Microphone Podcast. If you were tuned in last week and you want to know where last week's episode is, make sure to ask Zach Dworaczyk. Zach, where is last week's episode?
Who knows?
It's your fault. I'm
knows?
Rees Goodall. I'm joined by Joa'o, Lara, and Zach Dworaczyk. Joa'o, how are you doing?
Happy. Excited the Premier's back and excited to talk about last week.
Zach, how are you doing?
Thrilled, man. First day of classes. Prem's back. Got another excellent week of football coming up. It's just a great day.
I'm happy for you. Well, it was a jam-packed weekend to open the 2025-26 Premier League season. Lots of matches being played across England and a big transfer story as well. Joining Arsenal, Eberechi Eze. We'll get into that. But we'll start things off with the club that Eze is joining, Arsenal, and their match against Manchester United. Joa'o, what were your thoughts on that match and United losing 1-0? It felt like a match that United should have been able to win. What were your thoughts on United falling out at home?
There's a classic saying in Spanish that I'm just gonna switch over to English real quick. They played like never and they lost like always. I think that Man United showed lots of promise. I think that they've sort of resorted back to what Man United has been good at these past 5 years, and I think it's been under every system. I think that counterattack can be lethal. I think that counterattack can really do some damage, and there were a lot of players who proved their worth, and it's very exciting as a Manchester United fan. Now, just seeing the game overall, I mean, whenever a team that hasn't been on a good run recently goes up against a club that's been playing at a high level and really competes those 90 minutes, I think that's great to see too.
Zach, what are
I
your
think
thoughts
bouncing
there?
off what Joa'o said, playing through transition was key for United. We saw Mbeumo get out and just dominate in open space at times. He couldn't quite find his shot. He couldn't quite find decisions in the box. I mean, there often wasn't people in the box, but he was key in counterattacking for United, and we saw a big performance from Matheus Cunha. There was a lot of criticism online surrounding his preseason performance, especially from a certain fan base who didn't like him picking the number 10. And I think he went out there and proved his worth. I think he showed why Manchester United bought him.
Yeah, I mean, that moment where he dribbled through Arsenal's whole defense and then took the shot on goal, that was a moment that just, really stood out and as to what Matheus Cunha can bring to this side. I know, again, I was one of those people that is skeptical about that transfer, as he had a season where he overperformed what a lot of his advanced metrics say he should have played like. And, the big question surrounding him and surrounding quite a few of United signings this window is, can that be sustainable? Can they turn that into a full body of work? And, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about, is this a stepping stone for Cunha to have another big season like last year?
Really, I think that it is. I think that with the system that Manchester United sort of has in the middle, obviously they're missing that one piece, and they're still trying to see who to find to really replace Ugarte and really whoever plays that central midfield position. But I think there's just a lot of quality in the squad. And what I really like too, I like the creativeness in the middle. I don't know if you guys saw, but just the way Manchester United was able to touch the ball between Mbeumo and between Fernandes and in between really Dorgu, I think it was phenomenal. I think that, with against a defense that isn't that well calibrated or even then lined up like Arsenal, I think that they can absolutely do wonders, and this system around them, it's there and it's made to support them. So I think really we should see a great season, and if not, I'm not going to be worried if he doesn't reach those numbers like last year, because really whenever you're talking about someone who wasn't prolific, you can point the finger at Rasmus Højlund. I think he had 4 goals in the Premier League last season. As long as we have, I want to say 10, 15 from Cunha, and somewhere around that ballpark with Mbeumo, and then hopefully, Benjamin Šeško plays his part too, we are up in the goal counts more than last year at least. So I'm not that worried necessarily.
I want to emphasize how good Patrick Dorgu was in this game. Obviously, he had the one would-be stunner of a shot off the post, but he was excellent carrying the ball. And that's just something that United has needed for some time. I mean, Ruben Amorim's system plays heavy through the wingbacks, and that was just something that wasn't present last season, outside of the occasional Ahmad shifts at right wing back. But Dorgu being brought in January, I think last season he was a bit green, but he's really started to find his footing in preseason, and after seeing that performance versus Arsenal, I expect a big season out of him, honestly.
And I have to completely agree with that. I mean, it's a total parallel, or not parallel, but opposite to what you saw on the other side of the pitch with Diogo Dalot, where, Dorgu delivered such an impressive performance for United. And Dalot, you kind of know what you're going to expect with him when you see him in that right wing-back spot. He was ultimately replaced by Amad Diallo in the 55th minute. And Amad, we've seen him in that role, and that's probably his most successful role within this United system, because playing him as one of the 210s, likely on the right side, just hasn't seemed to quite worked out. But again, United, with this system, we have seen them struggle. We have seen them, just not look good, look lethargic at times. This game was not that. The reason they didn't win was because, they weren't clinical enough. I mean, the fact of the matter is, they had the shots on target, but they weren't. How many times did they really test David Raya? Of those 7 shots, they had 22 total throughout the whole 90 minutes. I mean, I know Raya made some great saves, but these were just not great shots. I mean, the expected goals tally, 22 shots for Man United. Arsenal had 9. The expected goals tally is only difference by 0.21. Manchester United had an expected goals mark of 1.52, while Arsenal's was 1.31. Obviously, the bulk of Arsenal's came off the set pieces, but I mean, United, they really, really didn't have too many clear-cut chances where you can really look back at and say, if he had converted that, it's a different game. We walk out of here with a point, or maybe even the full 3 points. And another indicator of that is the expected goals on target model, which is a post-shot model explaining, the quality of a shot. Now, the expected goals model explains the quality of the chance, when a player has a ball on the right wing, left wing, whatever, wherever the shot comes from. The expected goals on target pretty much says the expected goals of where the shot is in relation to the goal. Arsenal's number, I know it's heavily skewed because of the Ricardo Calafiori goal off the set piece, is 1.21. Man United's was 0.75. Again, they need to do a better job creating quality chances. I mean, Benjamin Šeško is going to need better opportunities if he's really going to get going. I mean, you don't want to repeat the same script as you have done over these last couple years with Joshua Zirkzee and Rasmus Højlund, where you're losing confidence in these strikers early.
Which I want to talk about sort of Man United's position with their strikers real quick, and then I want to shift over more towards Arsenal, their perspective in the match, because I don't think it was beautiful from that side. Really, I think that with at least last season with Rasmus Højlund, I think there were plentiful amounts of opportunities in the box for him to demonstrate what he can do. There were a couple of plays per game, if not every 2-3 games, where he had something that was in the box, something that was attainable, but simply the clinicalness wasn't there. I think keeping Joshua Zirkzee was not a bad decision from the Man United board. I really think that he's a passionate player that can still grow. I don't think he's a starter. He could come off the bench and make an impact off the bench. But Šeško, I think, it's gonna be something that it's gonna have to work as a system. It's gonna have to work as a system because he needs the ball. And I think last game when he had the ball, it wasn't necessarily in situations where he had really a lot of opportunities to do something with the ball.
Kind of going off what Rees was talking about with Dalot on the right side, I wanted to ask both of y'all a question I've seen going around a lot recently, and that's, who would you start if you're Ruben Amorim at the right wing-back position? Diogo Dalot or Amad Diallo?
Has to be Amad, in my opinion, because I mean we've seen year after year with Dalot is that he doesn't really have that quality that a Manchester United side needs. Yes, he's a Prem player, but Ahmad brings so much. I know it's not the best utilization of his skill set, and defensively it's not great either. But in this system, you have to get a guy like Ahmad in there, and that's the role that fits him best. You have to get him in there, find what gets the most out of him. And for him, in this side, with Ruben Amorim at the helm, it's that right wing back spot.
Now, I feel like we've talked a lot about Manchester United in this podcast. We're not a Manchester United-based podcast. Rees, give me a rundown on Arsenal and really how did you see this game? How did you live this game? What do you think is lacking in this Arsenal squad to be able to go out and contend for a title like we've been talking about in the past couple weeks?
I don't think that this game showed anything that makes me believe that Arsenal cannot win the title this year. I think it's rather quite the opposite. I mean, you look at games like this that went Arsenal's, or didn't go Arsenal's way, rather, last season, Arsenal would have lost this game last season. They would have, conceded that Cunha shot. They would have had let in a set piece because last year Arsenal were terrible defending set pieces. Well, remains to be seen how good they'll be this year. But, last season Arsenal in these tight, ugly games where they're losing the expected goals tally, they're not creating a lot of chances. They're either walking out of there with an ugly draw or losing it. Winning this game really provides a lot of hope that Arsenal can go on to win the league because, again, they got the job done. I mean, again, it was a very resilient defensive performance. I mean, Ben White, I think he struggled a little bit more than I would have liked. And I do think that Mikel Arteta will revert to Jurrien Timber at that right back spot. But, I mean, Calafiori looked great on the left back side. The two center backs, Gabriel and Saliba, we all know what both those two can do. I mean, they're the best center back pairing in the league, without a doubt. The midfield struggled a little bit, but, I mean, the fight from this team, the fight from this Arsenal side is something to really write home about. It was just, that's the main thing, the main focus of what I took from this game. Another part of it is, you look at Arsenal's record at Old Trafford over the years. In the league, in the Premier League, since I was born, Manchester United has been beaten by Arsenal 3 times at Old Trafford. It's not a ground where Arsenal go to and dominate. They might dominate Manchester United when they go to the Emirates in a few months' time, but when it's at Old Trafford, Manchester United seem to have Arsenal's number year after year after year. And it's not like that for other Big Six clubs, but Arsenal never have a good performance there, and it's why you really shouldn't be worried about how some of the new signings that came into the squad and had lackluster performances. You shouldn't be worried about that because of Arsenal's track record at Old Trafford.
Now, what would you give, or at least Zach, Rees, what would you guys give Victor Gyökeres' performance, and what do you think was really the most optimistic things that were really out there for an Arsenal fan this season with Gyökeres?
Zach,
I think the most optimistic thing you could say is that he has time. This is just his first match. He's playing away on a tough ground against, quite honestly, United center backs do not get enough credit for how good individually talented they are, I believe. And he has time. He has time to settle into his place. Like Rees said off camera, he expects big performances out of him in the coming weeks. And we could see that, 1 week doesn't define your career. 1 week doesn't define your season. It's just how it is.
And I completely agree, and it reverts to my original point where, again, Old Trafford is a difficult ground. As a whole, though, I don't think you could really take too much out of Victor Gyökeres' performance. I mean, there was one moment where he got the ball on the left side and was making a run to cut inside. And as he did that, he just lost the ball. The ball got stuck under his foot. It's all right. Like, it's not something you want to see from your striker, from a guy you spent so much money for if you're Arsenal. But again, it's a difficult ground to play in. I do think he looked good at times. His hold-up play, which was really expected. He had a few good passes. He only had 9 passes in the whole game. And there were a few times where he got involved into duels against some of the United center backs and won it very clearly. But again, it's not really a performance where there's too much to take out of it because he didn't get the ball at his feet enough.
And that's the thing. I sort of wanted. I'm not necessarily talking down on Gyökeres and his performance and everything, but I wanted to get your perspective. I want to get your perspective on his play, especially in today's day, where I think overreactions are starting to become something very frequent in football culture. You see a player who was spent a lot of money on, they're not performing, and then people start sounding the alarms like, oh, Gyökeres flop, Gyökeres this, Gyökeres that, when quite simply, gotta take our time, see what he's gonna do. I mean, Leeds this weekend should be a great match for him. And yeah, I mean, I really concur with you guys and everything you're saying. I just wanted to see your guys' perspective on something so new and something so big like Gyökeres and Arsenal.
And another reason to me that Gyökeres had such a difficult and disappointing performance is the performance, or really lack thereof, in all honesty, from Gabriel Martinelli on that left wing. And it was a performance where, if you're an Arsenal fan and you've watched a lot of Arsenal over the last few seasons, you've kind of expected this from Martinelli. The downturn of him has been something to behold. I mean, he just did not look good on the left wing whatsoever. I mean, he was dribbling with his head down. He, didn't complete any dribbles. He did create a chance somehow. He didn't play a lot of passes. There was just no threat from Martinelli on that left wing, which, we'll get into in a moment, makes the Eberechi Eze signing absolutely massive for this Arsenal team, because we have spoke so much about how Martinelli is kind of a black hole in Arsenal's attack, where the ball gets to him, and that's kind of that over the last year and a half or so. And again, this was another difficult performance. I mean, one of the moments that really stands out to me from this game, from Martinelli's 60 minutes on the pitch, is when he went for that bicycle kick. It really wasn't necessary, and he didn't come anywhere close to it. That felt like Martinelli as a whole. It felt like it encapsulated everything Martinelli does for however long he's on the pitch. It felt like he just does too much and doesn't know how to do it. It's just a frustrating player to watch, because we've seen the potential. We've seen what Martinelli can bring, but then he gives you things like this, and it just makes you go, what? How is this guy a Premier League footballer?
And I mean, I think there's Premier League footballers that are necessarily at these Big Six squads that, quite simply, they have the caliber to be in the Premier League, but I don't think they deserve these spots at these big clubs. I think Delô was a great example. Martinelli's a great example. I think Gabriel Jesus at some point became one of those examples too, where initially he was really promising, and then later on very disappointing. Just really disappointing and frustrating. Really, I could imagine, if I were an Arsenal fan watching Martinelli play, and especially in those big moments, give up opportunities like that. This as a to Arsenal transfer just makes so much sense, and seeing how the community is already rallying around this transfer, seeing the reaction, seeing just the overall excitement, this feels like one of those transfers that just means a little more than your regular everyday transfer.
I like the term that Rees used. It might be a bit offensive, but I like the term black hole, because that's just kind of how it felt like whenever Martinelli gets the ball nowadays. I just feel like his possessions go nowhere, and often Arsenal struggle to create chances whenever he has the ball at his feet. And I just think that's what makes this Eze signing so much more impressive. I mean, we've talked about Eze before on this podcast. He's quite the versatile player in the attack, and he's one of the best progressive players in the Prim, regardless of where you play him at. And I just think this signing is so huge, and it adds so much to potential Arsenal title charge.
Yeah, and that is really the main focus now, is what Eze can bring. It's, again, we've spoke so much, I feel like, on this podcast about these Mikel Arteta profiles, where they're guys that can play here, there, and everywhere. And Eze is one that fits that perfectly. He has played on the right wing in sparing moments. Mainly plays as a 10, and also can play as a left wing. I'd imagine in the immediate future, it's more of a left winger. And he's just meant to, take on players and then move inside and, allow, Declan Rice more of the outside so he can play crosses in. Who knows how that'll actually play out. But again, Eze's chance creation is, second to none at times. He's so good. And it's really exciting to see him at a big club because, we've seen him with Palace. We've seen him win the FA Cup. Now he's on the biggest stage. He'll be playing Champions League football. That's what every footballer dreams of. And as Joa'o mentioned a moment ago, this is a signing that is big for the community because Eze is a guy who, grew up in the Arsenal Academy, was dropped at, I believe he was 13 years old when he was released from the Arsenal Academy. And he's spoken on record multiple times about how it absolutely broke him. He just was left in tears, but he wanted to do anything to make it back at the Emirates. It was his dream to play for Arsenal. And, he's kept Arsenal in his heart all these years. And it's why I was so shocked to see Tottenham even in the running for Eze, because he's spoken about how much Arsenal means to him. When he was with Reading, he was predicting Arsenal to win the league, which was in 2018-19. He saw a defensive Socrates. Guendouzi was in that lineup, and he saw that team winning the league. That is an Arsenal fan true and through, if I've ever seen one. And, to see him get his move back to his dream club, it's just something that you love to see as a football fan.
Honestly, I totally agree with this. And I see this more in... Obviously, I follow Liga MX and everything. I see this more in Liga MX, and I sort of understand where, Arsenal fans are coming from, where Eze is coming from, and really it's just there's so many factors that go into his transfer. But also, I think that besides, being a phenomenal player, I just think that passion is something that we don't see that much in today's game, and especially passion for the badge, because it used to be something that was so common before, and I think that's why games were so really just thrilling, because it was just people trying to defend their team. And I think that this is going to be an extra boost for Eze, and he's just going to go crazy. I don't see a scenario where really he doesn't end up panning out to what he's expected to be here at Arsenal.
And I just think this is a story that makes you love sports even more. It's so beautiful to see somebody who was at a club's academy, who was a childhood fan, a childhood supporter, get to return and play on the biggest stage for that club or that team, or put on for that fan base, put on for where he's from. It's something beautiful, and it makes really and truly love sports.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that. And then, we've spoken about how much he can bring to the team off the field. On the field, again, he's such a good chance creator. I really am excited to see what he does on the pitch. There's rumors he might be available this weekend against Leeds. I strongly doubt it, but who knows? He sat out today's Europa Conference League playoff, I think it was. That's what the round is now for Crystal Palace. He's going to have his medical likely on Friday, and it's an exciting time to support Arsenal. But if you're a fan of their biggest rival, Tottenham Hotspur, you're feeling quite bad about this, because they were in. They pretty much had not pen to paper, but the pen was in his hand. And then Arsenal called, and Eze's wearing red and white. How would you feel if you were a Spurs fan about that?
I think I'd be infuriated. I think that, in a season where Spurs needs these Eze type of transfers in order to, push for even more and try to demonstrate, what this Tottenham squad is capable of, it's absolutely disappointing. And I mean, it's one thing to lose a player like Eze, and I repeat this phrase again. It's one thing to lose a player like that, but then it's another thing to lose it to your rival. It's something that really just keeps you up at night.
And I think especially with the James Maddison injury, this is just got to be a gut punch for Spurs fans, especially seeing him go to your biggest rivals. I mean, you just have to be absolutely disgusted. And that's one thing. Spurs won 3-0 this weekend against Burnley. Granted, it's Burnley, but
It's Burnley.
I felt that I felt like they really needed a true creative presence in the center, and I felt like they were missing Madison heavily throughout that match. I thought that they did great playing through the wings. I thought they did great playing through Mohamed Kudus, but I felt like they needed a more central presence in the midfield, and I thought Eze was going to bring that, but without the signing of Eze, where do you go if you're Spurs?
I don't know. I mean, there's numerous names that have been brought up. We'll get to those in a second, but this isn't the first target that Tottenham has missed out on this transfer window. I mean, we've talked about the Morgan's Gibb White situation on this podcast, where Nottingham Forest feels like they forced him into re-signing a new contract, and it just a weird situation that one is. And then they also targeted Savinho from Man City. They're not going to end up with him. If they've been kind of trying to offload Richarlison in each of these deals. They can't do that. He did have a brace on the weekend, so who knows the future of him. But it's just such a frustrating transfer window for Tottenham after this Europa League triumph, where some felt like it was going to bolster the profile of the club and turn them into a powerhouse. Now, not some. I want to be very clear there. But it just feels like everything is going against Tottenham this window.
And it's just, once again, it's so disappointing to basically have the Morgan Gibbs White transfer over the line, quote unquote. Social media journalists like Fabrizio Romano. Yeah, we got the official "here we go," and usually these days that means it's 100% confirmed. But going from possibly Morgan Gibbs White and Eze to Spurs, especially, and once again a big season, to only having Mohamed Kudus, which still, once again, I think he's a great player. I think he's going to do great things. But you need that push. You don't want to remain in the same spot. And they're just getting absolutely played. It's been twice. Who knows if it were to happen a third time? Who knows if Richarlison finds this just jump out of nowhere in his career? There's so many questions up in there with Tottenham, and time is running out. Time is running out, and they need to find someone soon, because if not, they're gonna be stuck in mediocrity, which I think has been something very consistent for a very long time in this Tottenham squad.
Yeah, and I find it interesting their links to Savinho. I think Savinho's a great player. I think he's a good talent, but I just don't think he's exactly what they need. I don't think he's exactly quite the fit that they need to take this team to the next level. Like I said, I think they need a more central presence. Morgan Gibbs White would have absolutely been that, as they could have provided that. I don't understand the links to Savinho just quite yet. And I'm curious to see what Daniel Levy and this squad do going forward to make improvements.
And one of their targets that they've been going after, I'm absolutely going to butcher the pronunciation of this name, so bear with me. It's from Monaco, 23 years old, Magnus Akaluche. I hope I pronounced that right. Akaluche? Who knows? But he is a very talented player. I mean, I pulled his stats up here through Ben Griffith's Streamlit model. His assist numbers, second assist numbers, expected assists number, smart passes, very elite creator. I've been watching some of his tape from his time with Monaco. I mean, he's backing up the stats with the eye test. The top 10% in all the creative categories that you'd like to see from a 10. And then he also follows it up with just dynamic. He's a dynamic player. It sounds like a price tag is going to be worth around $47.5 million, but it's a player that Tottenham's going to be needing desperately. Also, we talked about Richarlison and how he could be potentially leaving. Another target of theirs is Joa'o Wissa from Brentford, a very fascinating striker, where he is just probably the second best poacher in the Premier League right after Holland. 19 goals last season, 18.5 expected goals, which is a tally that you don't typically see that close to the expected goals mark. Typically when a guy's at 19, 20 goals around that mark, his expected goals is 7, 6 lower, a few lower. And he is not that overperformer that he would, you usually see. He obviously brings an elite aerial presence, one of the best strikers at winning aerial duels, wins just south of 50%. It's a fascinating name because it's not the same player as Richarlison. It feels more similar to Harry Kane.
Zach, I'll let you take this one first. I know I've been harping off first, and I don't want to make it seem like your opinion. I'll let you go ahead.
All good, all good.
No, I'll cut him off.
I think Visa's an interesting signing. I think that with what Richarlison showed this weekend, I thought it was very impressive. I kind of found it was interesting how Thomas Frank was kind of relying on Richarlison and hold-up play, which is something I feel like we just haven't seen from a manager before, or seen a manager ask of him before. It worked out mixed results, but he ended up scoring a brace, and I thought it was an impressive enough performance, but I understand wanting to make the upgrade, which it is an upgrade. There is a clear upgrade from Richarlison to Joa'o Visa. But I just kind of wonder if it's necessary comparatively to the need for a more creative talent in the midfield at this moment.
Totally agreed, and I think that sure, upgrade in the striker department would be great for Spurs, but simply there's other holes that have to be filled before you're looking at replacing a striker necessarily. And also, I just think that if Visa does end up leaving Brentford, I think that's a sign thing that Brentford is almost really gonna go down. I just think that you lose someone like Visa, you lose a high caliber player, your odds to stay up just decrease dramatically. So it's more. I'm not worried about Tottenham in this situation, in this transfer. It's more Brentford and what the future of this squad is gonna look like.
I mean, we talked about that on last week's episode that didn't air. Thank you, Zach Dworaczyk. We pretty much all agree that Brentford is either going to go down this year or is going to have to fight to stay up, and it'll be by the thinnest of margins if they do. Looking at Palace Society, they're selling Eze, of course. I do think they're a team that is in a really good position still. I worry about how they'll be able to cope with the European campaign with some of this depth. I mean, you see that a lot. Some of these, lesser sides, I don't want to say lesser. That's not really the best word, but it's the only word that comes to mind, is pretty much non-Big Six sides. They get into these European competitions, and they might succeed in Europe, but the toll is, a mid-table finish in the Premier League because they just don't have the squad depth. They are looking at a very fascinating name in La Liga, Jeremie Frimpong from Villarreal. He's a very talented winger, but he is also a little bit injury-prone in a way that's not... It's not like he has nagging injuries, but he's had 2 major ones. He missed 11 games a few years back, and he also missed the entirety of or not the entirety, but the bulk of the 2023-24 season with a ACL injury. Again, it's a fascinating player, but it's a more fascinating team. We'll have to wait and see what is in store for Crystal Palace. Looking at some of the other games, though, from last weekend, we went well in depth on Arsenal and Man United, so we won't be going any further on that. But we'll have to start with the opening game of the season, Liverpool versus Bournemouth, a very, very emotional match at Anfield, and one that Liverpool, were comfortable in a way up 2-0 in the 60th minute. Then Semenyo delivers 2 good goals. And then all of a sudden, Liverpool pulls 2 back late, and it's 4-2. Very weird game for Liverpool. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Go ahead.
I thought it showed some signs of weakness from Liverpool at times, especially in their midfield composition. I talked a lot with Joa'o about this off camera. I'm really interested to see how the squad lines up once Ryan Gravenberch is back from suspension and see if he's going to be a consistent starter. I'd expect him to, but I'm interested to see who they take out of the lineup, because obviously they're not taking Florian Wirtz out. It's either Alexi McAllister or it's Dominic Szoboszlai. And if they don't insert Ryan Gravenberch into that lineup, I think they can be very vulnerable in the counterattack, which is something we've kind of expressed before in the past.
I saw a lot of things I like from Liverpool. I liked them when they were attacking defensively. Once again, their woes defensively. I think they were noticeable in that game. I think that there were some instances where they did struggle defensively. The midfield is the biggest question. I didn't like the way that Florian Wirtz was used. I think he was held back a little more. I just think that he also didn't really seem comfortable on the ball like initially, and it's just he was forced to really give that pass to try to see someone open, and then he tried to find his opportunities on the run. I'm not used to seeing Wirtz being used in that manner. I'm used to him, being able to not only take on a defender but sort of create that space and expose that space. So it was a little odd watching Florian Wirtz this game.
I definitely agree with that. It was not the best performance from him. He did create a couple of chances, which kind of makes his rating and performance look better than it actually was. But again, he just needs to be a little bit more active in the final third. You both talked about it. I wasn't as concerned watching the game with how Liverpool's defensive structure and midfield looked. The rest defense, I thought, wasn't as open as I really thought it was. Yes, Kerkez and Frimpong didn't have great games at all. I mean, Kerkez really struggled with Antoine Semenyo when he was taken off. Andy Robertson didn't do much better, but Semenyo is a top player who I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a move to a big club in the near future. But I thought the way they rotated McAllister and Szoboszlai in the double pivot really prevented any way that Bournemouth's midfield was going to run over Liverpool's defense and midfield themselves. And, getting it like that, it was interesting. It was fascinating. I just didn't think Van Dijk and Konate were exposed as often as I really expected them to be. Again, Bournemouth, obviously not a great side. They've obviously lost a handful of players this window. Haven't quite invested that money into the attack. So we'll see, what the future is. All in all, I think Liverpool has stuff to work on. But again, as I mentioned, first game back at Anfield after Diogo Jota passed, you could kind of feel it was a different atmosphere in Anfield from before the match even kicked off. And I think in a more calm atmosphere, in a more normal atmosphere, it's a different performance from Liverpool to kick off the Premier League. Then the Saturday fixtures, there's quite a few. None that really, or there's a couple that are exciting. Aston Villa, Newcastle, that was boring. That was bad. Newcastle without Isak, they're very worrying. Villa, nothing really much to write home about. Brighton 1-1 against Fulham. Fulham, a late equalizer. Carlos Baleba, the only reason he stands out to me is because, the target from Manchester United. Manchester United been looking at purchasing him for an exorbitant fee. I thought looked really average in this game. Obviously, the ball-winning ability is really, really exceptional, but in possession, just struggled. I just almost thought that he was non-existent with the ball, which in a midfield like Manchester United just simply can't happen.
Yeah, there were some doubts from that game. I just think that there were theories and rumors going out there. Oh, Baleba throwing a performance or Baleba not performing up to par to bring his value down. But no, I think this is once again it's yes, he's used to playing with the squad. I don't wanna necessarily say, oh, Baleba won't make it in a system like Man United. Let's give it some games. Let's just see how the season starts. Obviously, sometimes season performances do carry over. Sometimes they take time. I'm not necessarily concerned about it. It's just something that people are gonna have to sit down and see how Baleba progresses during these first couple games, and then a determining factor can be decided on whether he's the caliber of a Manchester United player or not.
Yeah, and I wouldn't put too much weight into this one game. I mean, he's been dealing with I believe it was a knock. I mean, some people said he was just sitting out of training because he was trying to force a move, but that, as we could see, that was not the case. And I don't think you could take too much away from this performance. I don't think you could put too much weight into it. I mean, I felt like it was just an all right performance from him. It wasn't up to his par or up to the par that people have set for him, but you can't put too much weight into this one performance, I'd say.
That's definitely fair. I mean, who really knows the future of him? Because is there going to be a move? Will there be a move? Feels like we've been talking about that one for a while. Another game that stands out for a lot of reasons. Manchester City 4-0 over Wolves. Holland brace. Gianni Reinders scored one. Ryan Cherokee came off the bench to add the fourth. It felt like the Man City of old, where they're not slipping up against these small teams. They're not slipping up on these road matches. They're just going out there, getting the job done. Yes, Wolves were wasteful with some of their chances, but really, all in all, they didn't generate too many clear cut. You know, Strand Larson had one or two that you thought, maybe you should have done something better there. But, you know, Reinders had an excellent performance in the midfield. Nico Gonzalez looked the best he has in a Man City shirt. Oscar Bob, you know, I think, Zach, you mentioned him on last week's podcast that wasn't meant to be as a player that you'd like to watch. And he had a good game himself, completing 3 or 4 dribbles. It was just, I don't want to say a vintage Man City performance, but that's really what it is.
Yeah, this is peak Guardiola, or not peak Guardiola ball performance, but really just the high quality stuff, and it's something that Premier League fans and Man City fans are really used to watching. Nico Gonzalez, I think if he keeps this up, you know, Rodri being out won't be missed as much. Yes, Rodri is that caliber of player where you're gonna miss him, but I think with the performance that Gonzalez had, just the amount of times he was able to win a duel, the amount of times he was able to carry the ball up the pitch, and just his accuracy overall, I think that was very vital for your City squad with the new transfers. There's also, I think, you know, amazing transfer, and then Cherokee too. It was expected for him to do great things. He's off to a great start.
I still have my concerns about this Man City back line. I'd really like to see them versus some better competition. Like Rees said, there weren't too many clear-cut chances there that Wolves were wasteful with, but I do think there were opportunities for more progression, more chances to be created against this City side. With that being said, them going forward, this is going to be an all-time team, it feels like. Just Gianni Reinders, what a performance from him. Playing the 8, he looked every bit of the De Bruyne replacement that some people have talked him up to be. And then Ryan Cherokee coming in off the bench, just what a performance. He grabbed an absolute banger of a goal in his first performance for City, and I just I'm worried about this squad. I'd say, yeah, if I were a club trying to compete for a title, I'd be worried about this squad.
I completely agree, and you also look at, you know, Man City's players that missed out on this game due to injury. It is a grocery list of guys that weren't available. I mean, Ederson was out for illness. I think he's pretty much being forced out to make way for James Trafford. But Phil Foden missed out, Rodri missed out, Vardiol missed out, Kovacic missed out, Savinho missed out on the squad. It was a very thin, in a way, you could say, squad for Man City, which is, you know, still an elite squad because this is a team that has a lot of depth. But this is a team that, you know, if you're Arsenal, you just signed Eze. You got to be feeling a little bit better than you did, you know, a day after watching that game against Wolves, because that team looks lethal. Sunday's games, we talked about Arsenal, Man United. Do you want to talk about any more about it? I don't. Chelsea, Crystal Palace. Chelsea, it's not really a worrying sign, but it was just a defensive stalemate, so you can't really take too much out of it. And then Monday's game. This was a fascinating one. And with controversy, of course, because that's just how life works. When there's fascination, there is controversy. Leeds United were all over Everton. All over. You know, they generated a ton of chances. Yes, their expected goals tally is going to be a bit inflated due to them winning that penalty, which probably shouldn't have been. But for a team returning to the Premier League that many people have going down to the Championship, Leeds looked really, really good in this match.
Well, Joa'o, you want to go first? I just letting you go.
Floor is yours, bud.
All right. Well, I just thought Leeds looked like the far and away better team, better side this match. I thought that what they did off set pieces was quite impressive. I thought that Jordan Pickford was quite often out of place in the box, and I thought that led to some really interesting chances for Leeds off set pieces. That being said, I don't necessarily agree with the decision the ref made to give a penalty there. I don't think that was a handball at all. I understand that he was kind of leaning into it, but I think that was a very natural position for the hand and arm to be in. But with that being said, I think all in all, Leeds was the better side this match, and they deserved the win.
Yeah, I mean, totally, and it's just the amount of shots, the amount of opportunities they had. It was sort of disappointing in seeing how they weren't able to finish them. But even then, controversy and with everything in the match, it's very unfortunate for Everton fans and especially when calling what's right. But in terms of the way that Leeds played, I think still that win is deserving.
Well, they didn't finish a lot of chances, so they brought in Dominic Calvert-Lewin, the mighty DCL, to lead their line for the next, I think, 3 seasons. That's how long their contract was with him, which is a little bit mental in my opinion. But, they desperately need a striker. Lucas Nmeka finished that game. Patrick Bamford, bless his heart. He's already been told he'll never feature for the squad again, but he's just a shell of himself at 31 years old. When they were in the Championship, when they were doing so much, getting their way to the Premier League, he was so instrumental in that. But since then, it's just he's lost all confidence. He just is, again, a shell of himself. But turning gears now to this upcoming weekend of fixtures. Some exciting games. They kick off tomorrow with the Friday kickoff. West Ham hosting Chelsea. West Ham, very bad West Ham, and a West Ham that did not impress by any stretch of the imagination against Sunderland in their 3-0 defeat. For Chelsea, this is a game where it's almost a get-right game. Yes, it's another London derby to open the season. 2 straight London derbies is a little bit, or it's actually 4 straight London derbies that they open the season with. That is a bit insane. They open the year home to Crystal Palace. They go away to West Ham, as I mentioned, tomorrow. The weekend after, they are home to one of their biggest rivals, Fulham. And then 2 weeks later, after the international break, they go away to Brentford. Back to this game against West Ham. Cole Palmer, we've seen his struggles. Chelsea struggles as a whole against Crystal Palace. Again, this is a get-right game for them.
I'd expect Chelsea to do decently well. I wasn't too impressed by their attack against Crystal Palace, but that was all in all just a defensive stalemate. I think this is really a get-right game for them. I don't rate this West Ham side all that highly. We discussed in our deleted episode that they could be a side that might be going down. So I think really and truly get-right game is the only way you can describe this for Chelsea. Yeah,
and there's just it's a West Ham squad that isn't already well, and still they're losing more and more depth. Even then, they've lost Kudus, obviously, and then Edson Alvarez is also rumored to go to Turkey also, so they're losing another piece in the midfield. And it's just a squad that just doesn't really seem to have any cohesion. It should be great for Chelsea especially, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Maresca sort of experiment with something a little bit more difficult. Experiment with something a little bit more different, especially knowing that you sort of have the better squad.
Well, score predictions for this game?
I've thought a bit about this one. I'm going to give it a light 2-0 Chelsea. I consider going more, but I think 2-0 is a very safe bet.
I think Chelsea can take this match 3-1.
I was going to say 3-1. I was also going to say 2-0 as my backup. So we'll go right in the middle, 3-0 Chelsea, following up the same score from last weekend. Then we go to Saturday. The early kickoff is far and away the biggest game of this day. I will not be waking up for it. Why is that? Because it is at 4:30 a.m. Arizona time. If either of you two are awake for it, I will be calling somebody to check up on you, because that is just not acceptable. It's Man City Tottenham at the Etihad, where Tottenham, weirdly enough, over the last couple of years has kind of had the edge. Last year in the Premier League, when Man City was on their downturn, Tottenham won 4-0 up there. The year before, 3-3 draw. Two matchups before that, Man City won 4-2, but the one before that, they lost 3-2. It's the one where Tottenham has City's number, weirdly enough. What are your guys' take on this game?
I agree with what you're saying. This is a fixture that Tottenham has had City's number in, and that City have struggled with. With that being said, this is a different City side, especially from last year. And it's at home. It's at the Etihad. Not saying the Etihad's the hardest ground to play at, but I think that it only plays to City's advantage in this match. I think they will dominate Tottenham offensively. I'm very curious to see how Tottenham can create chances against that City backline. I'd be interested to see what kind of performance Mohamed Kudus puts in this match. I'd like to see a performance from Rees in this match. And I think it's a kind of a telltale match to see how much Thomas Frank's side needs to improve and see where they're at right now.
Here's my thing with sort of squads like this. I think that Man City has the pieces to get the job done and certainly take the win. But I don't want to base this result on sort of the Wolverhampton match. I really think if Tottenham has that sort of momentum going into Etihad, if they've had City's number over these past couple of years, I'm not gonna just go straight out and say that Tottenham is gonna take the win, because I don't see it happening. I can honestly see this being a very entertaining match, which is very unfortunate because of the hour. I give it a 2-2 draw.
Wow.
I'm fascinated by this game. I kind of wish they didn't fire Ange Postecoglou, because I would love to see City's attack go up against Spurs' high line. I think that game would end somewhere between 20 and 30-0 if that was the case. But unfortunately, it's not. And, I do think Thomas Frank has something in store. That was kind of his masterclass in a way when he was with Brentford, was going away to these big sides and causing a match. I think a 2-2 draw is the most unrealistic, but this game always has chaos. And when you're predicting scores and when you're predicting results, sometimes you got to predict a little chaos too. So when you're right, you look like a genius. And I'm going to predict a 3-3 draw.
Wow, that's just... I like that. And then once again, just disappointing because of the hour. Because could you imagine this being an 8:30 slate game and just a 3-3 draw? Would be absolutely amazing. I don't see a draw, a high scoring draw, to be sort of far fetched. I want it to be a little bit more on the safe side and say 2-2, just because I think both squads have the capability to go out and just push a full 90, and it's just, these matches are very unpredictable. These big name clashes, they're never predetermined to say, oh, well, I think that if this squad is going through a better moment, they're definitely going to win this squad and they're gonna win by a certain margin. I don't hate that. I don't hate that 3-3 draw, and honestly, it gives a little bit more excitement too, just especially looking at what we've seen these past couple of weeks from both sides.
Yeah, I really like the idea of a 3-3 draw. I think that chaotic is one word that you could use to describe this fixture and the history of this fixture. I'm kind of leaning into a 3-2 City win. I could easily see it going the other way. I could easily see it being a draw, but I just think City is a class above the Spurs side right now. And until Spurs prove it to me, then I'm going to lean with City.
I thought you were going to follow our trend of predicting a draw and go 4-4, so I'm glad you didn't. But with the goals we've been predicting, I cannot wait to wake up before the 7 a.m. Arizona time kickoffs and see that match end 0-0. Knowing I feel my luck, our luck, it'll be the absolute biggest bore fest you'll ever watch. After, we're hyping up City's attack. They'll get one shot on target, Pamadou or Rising Ball style. We'll see. That's the biggest game on Saturday. There's few others, Bournemouth Wolves, Brentford Villa, Burnley Sunderland. Won't be predicting the scores for them. We will be predicting scores for Arsenal Leeds United. Victor Gyökeres' first official match at the Emirates. Could be Eze's first Premier League match at the Emirates too. Who knows? We'll wait and see. Leeds, very interesting team. We'll wait and see. I'm still skeptical on them. To me, this is a game where Arsenal are going to have their foot on the gas for 90 minutes. I can see this game easily ending 3-0.
Ooh, I'm not against that result. Myself personally, I was thinking 4-2. I think that this is a game where Victor Gyökeres can really demonstrate himself, and especially at home, and especially sort of having all these factors in favor. I really do like it. I don't know. I sort of like the momentum Leeds had last week. Sure, they weren't that clinical, but I don't know why I have little Liverpool Bournemouth vibes on this game.
I like what Rees's point that Arsenal are going to come out on the front foot and that they're going to be aggressive, pushing the pedal down on the gas the whole match. I was personally thinking 3-0, but to be different, I'm going to say Leeds get a goal in this one, 3-1 to Arsenal.
Interesting. And who's your goal scorer for Leeds? DCL?
For Leeds? DCL's not going to play. According to Fatbob right now, they're saying lack of fitness. So, we'll see.
Oh, no.
Heartbreaking. Well, the Sunday game's not that fascinating. Crystal Palace Forest could be something. Everton's first game at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. Terrible name, but against Brighton. 6 a.m. I'll watch the second half. No score predictions for those two. Fulham United. Interesting game. Fulham fascinated me against Brighton. They didn't look great. They didn't look bad. United spoke in depth about them against Arsenal. Who wants to speak more about that game? But again, it's an interesting game for United. I think it's kind of like Arsenal Leeds in a way, where United is going to come out on the front foot, but it is away. I've got every game from the last few years that United have played at the Craven Cottage in the Premier League on my second monitor to my right. Since Fulham got promoted back to the Premier League ahead of the 2020-21 campaign, every single game at the Craven Cottage between these two sides, which there have been 4, have been won by a 1-goal margin for Manchester United. In fact, the last 9 games at the Craven Cottage between these two teams, United have won 8. The lone game they didn't win was a 2-2 draw all the way back in August 2010. I don't think I was in kindergarten yet then. And I'm going to stick with that 1-goal margin. The last 2 have been 1-0. Let's make it a third time United. 1-0 Manchester United.
I can see this match. I sort of like following the statistic, and I was thinking about this before you had even brought it up. I can really just see this being a gritty match. I think that Fulham could strike first, sort of find Manchester United sort of lacking or sort of not awake. I think it's something that's sort of been common. But I really see Manchester United just coming back in this game, especially near the second half, and just winning it 2-1.
I like what Rees brought up about the history of this fixture and how it's always been gritty and how United tend to come out on top at Craven Cottage. I've kind of leaning 2-0 on this one. I could see it being a gritty game. I like the 1-0 prediction. I could see it being somewhere in that range, but 2-0 seems right to me.
Wow. 2-goal win for Manchester United. That would be the first time since February 2019. I was in 7th grade. Actually, I think all of us were. But who knows, Zach? Believe in miracles. Monday. This is a big game, but it's a bit lesser because Alexander Isak won't be there. Newcastle United versus Liverpool. Alexander Isak's current club against likely his future club. This is going to be interesting. This is a big test for Liverpool because St. James Park, as beautiful as some hosts on this podcast think it is, it's a difficult ground to go and play at. Their fans are ruthless. Oh, no, it's you, buddy. It's you, Joa'o. It's a difficult ground to go and try to get a result in. I know Liverpool have done a good job over that these last few years. But, as it's their fans are ruthless, their players are ruthless, like Joe Linton, Bruno Guimaraes. Those are two players that will leave a stud on you. It will be difficult. And it's one that it's another game where I don't really worry about Liverpool's defense as much because no Alexander Isak, Newcastle looked attacking inept in the attack last week. And I'd expect that to happen yet again against Liverpool. And I have Liverpool winning 3-1, we'll say.
I like those factors that you were saying. I was going to sort of diminish the scoreline just because Liverpool is away. I think that Liverpool takes this match sort of without a doubt. But really just seeing this attacking side and seeing, the way that they could link up, I can see Liverpool win this match 4-0.
Wow. That's a bit optimistic, and I thought I was going to be optimistic with my prediction. I'm leaning towards a 3-0 Liverpool win at St. James Park. I did take that into account, but I just think that this Newcastle attack is so poor. I do have my worries, like I've said early on this episode about Liverpool's defense, about their midfield, but I don't rate this Newcastle attack at all in its current state, and I think Liverpool's attack will be on point.
When I came up with the 3-1 scoreline in my head, I thought that's ambitious. That's a lot. 3-1. That's asking Liverpool to look quite good at times where they didn't quite show that against Bournemouth. And then Joa'o drops 4-0, Zach drops 3-0, and I go, wow, maybe I wasn't as aggressive as I needed to be. But we'll be back hopefully next week. Hopefully this episode gets posted, Zach Dworaczyk. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, cross everything that you have that this episode gets posted. We'll be back again hopefully next week. In the meantime, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow, whatever you do on all platforms. Make sure to follow Zach on Twitter. Where, Zach? What's your Twitter?
At Zach_Dworaczyk on Twitter.
Thank you. Joa'o, where can they find you?
At Joa'o Reports on Twitter.
You can find me at Rees11_. It's a beautiful game, but it's way more beautiful when Arsenal steal Eze from the Tottenham. Goodbye.